Most people want a better life, but look for big changes to make it happen. They wait for the right moment, the right motivation, or a sudden shift in circumstances. In reality, real change rarely comes in big moments. It starts in small actions repeated every day. This audiobook is built on that simple idea. Small daily habits shape how you think, how you act, and how your life moves forward. What you repeat daily becomes your direction. What you ignore daily becomes your limitation. Inside these chapters, you will see how ordinary routines can influence focus, discipline, emotional balance, and personal growth. You will learn how morning structure sets the tone for your entire day, how attention can be protected from distractions, and how simple systems can keep your life steady even when motivation is low. There is no complex method here, no overwhelming process. Only clear, practical steps that can be applied in real life without special conditions. If you have ever felt stuck, inconsistent, or unsure why progress feels slow, this is where understanding begins. Each idea in this audiobook is designed to help you take control of your daily actions and build a life that moves forward one small step at a time. Chapter 1. Build consistent morning routines that transform your life. Each morning carries a quiet opportunity to reset the direction of a life. The way the first hours of the day are handled often decides the quality of focus, energy, and emotional control that follows. Many people wake up and immediately react to noise, notifications, and obligations. That reaction becomes a pattern. Over time, the pattern becomes a lifestyle. A stable morning routine breaks that cycle and replaces reaction with intention. A consistent morning routine is not about perfection. It is about structure. It is about training the mind and body to operate with clarity before the world starts making demands. When the mind is still fresh and not yet influenced by external pressure, it becomes easier to guide thoughts in a useful direction. This is where discipline begins. Not in big moments of motivation, but in the first quiet decisions of the day. The first step in building a strong morning routine is waking up at a stable time every day. The body responds to rhythm. Irregular sleep patterns create mental fog and reduce emotional control. A fixed wake-up time teaches the body when to become alert. At first, this may feel difficult, especially if sleep habits are inconsistent. The adjustment period requires patience. Over time, the body adapts and begins to wake up with more natural energy. The moment of waking should not be filled with immediate digital distraction. Reaching for a phone right away floods the mind with information that does not belong to personal priorities. Messages, news, and social content create emotional noise before the mind has stabilized. A stronger approach is to remain still for a short period after waking. During this time, awareness returns fully to the present moment. Breathing becomes steady. Thoughts slow down. This simple pause sets the tone for control instead of reaction. Hydration is a practical foundation of morning stability. After hours without water, the body needs replenishment. Drinking water early supports physical energy and mental clarity. This is a simple action, but it influences alertness more than most people realize. When the body feels supported, the mind becomes easier to direct. After hydration, the next focus is movement. The body is designed for motion, not stillness. Light physical activity in the morning activates circulation and reduces stiffness. This does not require intense exercise. Simple stretching, walking, or controlled body movement is enough to signal the brain that the day has started with purpose. Movement creates energy rather than waiting for energy to appear. Mental clarity grows stronger when silence is included in the morning routine. A few minutes without input allows thoughts to settle. During silence, the mind begins to organize itself naturally. Without constant stimulation, awareness becomes sharper. This state is useful for setting direction for the day. Instead of reacting to uncertainty, the mind becomes capable of choosing priorities. A clear morning routine includes defining the purpose of the day. This does not need to be complicated. A short mental or written identification of what matters most for the day creates focus. Without this step, the day becomes scattered. With it, actions gain direction. When priorities are known early, decisions throughout the day become easier. Less energy is wasted on confusion. Discipline grows when small responsibilities are completed early. Making the bed, cleaning a personal space, or organizing a small area creates a sense of order. These actions may seem simple, but they signal responsibility to the mind. Order in the environment often reflects order in thinking. When the surroundings are controlled, mental stability improves. The morning routine should include a moment of reflection on personal values. This is not about motivation, but about alignment. A person benefits from remembering what kind of behavior they want to represent. Discipline, honesty, patience, and responsibility are examples of internal standards. When these are recalled early, decisions throughout the day tend to follow the same direction. Food in the morning plays a role in sustained energy. A balanced meal supports concentration and reduces fatigue later in the day. Eating with awareness instead of rushing creates a more stable relationship with energy. The act of eating becomes supportive rather than automatic. When the body is properly nourished, mental performance improves. A powerful morning routine avoids unnecessary complexity. Simplicity allows consistency. Many people fail not because they lack knowledge, but because their routines are too complicated to maintain. A strong routine focuses only on essential actions that can be repeated daily without resistance. Consistency matters more than intensity. Self-control is trained in the morning through small decisions. Choosing not to delay tasks builds internal strength. Each time a useful action is completed without hesitation, the mind becomes more disciplined. Over time, this discipline spreads into other areas of life. Work, relationships, and personal development all benefit from this foundation. Emotional stability in the morning is influenced by thought direction. Thoughts that focus on problems before the mind is prepared often create unnecessary stress. A more stable approach is to focus first on what can be controlled. Control of actions, attention, and response is always available. This awareness reduces emotional pressure and builds resilience. Consistency is more important than intensity in building a morning routine. A routine that is simple but repeated daily creates stronger results than an intense routine that is performed occasionally. The mind responds to repetition. Repetition builds identity. Over time, a person begins to see themselves as someone who operates with structure and discipline. There will be days when energy is low. On those days, the routine should not be abandoned. Instead, it should be simplified but still maintained. Even minimal actions preserve continuity. Continuity is what builds long-term transformation. Breaking the chain too often weakens progress. Maintaining even a small version of the routine keeps the discipline alive. A morning routine also strengthens focus by reducing decision overload. When basic actions are already decided, mental energy is preserved for important tasks. This prevents unnecessary exhaustion. A structured morning removes uncertainty and replaces it with clarity. Clarity leads to better performance in all areas of life. Over time, a consistent morning routine changes self-perception. A person begins to see themselves as someone who is organized, disciplined, and capable of control. This identity shift is powerful. Behavior tends to follow identity. When identity becomes stable, actions naturally align with it. External circumstances do not need to be perfect for a morning routine to work. The routine is designed to provide stability regardless of external conditions. Whether the environment is calm or chaotic, the structure remains. This creates resilience. A structured morning builds internal strength that does not depend on outside factors. Focus improves when distractions are delayed. The morning is a period where attention is naturally stronger. Protecting this period from unnecessary input allows deeper concentration later in the day. Information can always be processed later, but clarity is strongest when the mind is not overloaded early. A disciplined morning also improves long-term decision-making. When the day begins with control, decisions made later tend to be more thoughtful. The mind carries forward the tone set in the morning. A rushed morning often leads to a reactive day. A structured morning leads to a stable day. The process of building this routine requires patience. Habits do not form instantly. They develop through repetition. The first stage often feels forced. This is normal. Over time, actions become automatic. When automation is reached, effort decreases and consistency increases. Small improvements should be introduced gradually. Trying to change everything at once often leads to failure. A better approach is to add one stable habit at a time. Once it becomes natural, another can be added. This gradual structure ensures long-term sustainability. The purpose of a morning routine is not to create pressure, but to create stability. Stability allows growth. Without stability, progress becomes inconsistent. With stability, improvement becomes continuous and predictable. A strong morning routine builds trust in oneself. Each completed morning reinforces the belief that discipline is possible. This trust becomes a foundation for larger goals. When self-trust is strong, hesitation decreases. Action becomes more natural. Over time, mornings become a foundation of strength rather than a period of confusion. The way the day begins starts shaping the entire direction of life. Energy becomes more controlled. Focus becomes more stable. Decisions become more intentional. A life built on consistent morning habits gradually transforms without dramatic effort. Change happens quietly through repetition. Each morning becomes a small step in the same direction. Over time, those steps create a different life experience. Discipline in the morning is not about restriction. It is about freedom through structure. When the start of the day is controlled, the rest of the day becomes easier to navigate. This is where real transformation begins, not in sudden changes, but in steady, repeated action that builds a stronger version of life over time. Chapter 2. Develop disciplined daily habits for lasting personal growth. Daily discipline is not built through sudden effort. It is built through repeated choices that seem small in the moment but become powerful over time. Most people want change in their life but struggle to maintain the behaviors required for that change. The reason is not lack of ability. The reason is inconsistency in daily actions. When behavior is unstable, results are unstable. When behavior becomes structured, life begins to move in a predictable and upward direction. A disciplined life begins with understanding that actions shape identity. What a person does every day slowly defines who they become. This means personal growth is not a single event. It is the result of repeated patterns. Every decision either strengthens discipline or weakens it. There is no neutral ground. Even small actions influence direction more than most people realize. One of the strongest ways to develop disciplined habits is to reduce unnecessary choices. When the mind is forced to decide too many things throughout the day, energy becomes scattered. This weakens control. A structured daily system removes this pressure. When basic behaviors are decided in advance, mental energy becomes available for meaningful tasks. This creates a sense of order that supports consistency. A disciplined person does not rely on motivation. Motivation changes quickly based on emotion, environment, and external pressure. Discipline remains stable even when motivation disappears. This stability is what creates lasting personal growth. When action continues regardless of mood, progress becomes reliable instead of random. The development of discipline requires starting with small commitments. Large changes often create resistance in the mind. Small actions reduce resistance and allow repetition. Repetition is what builds strength. For example, choosing to complete one focused task every day builds more discipline than planning an entire transformation and failing to sustain it. The size of the action is less important than its consistency. Daily habits must be connected to clear purpose. Without purpose, actions become mechanical and eventually lose meaning. When a person understands why a habit matters, the mind becomes more willing to continue it. Purpose gives direction to repetition. It transforms simple behavior into intentional growth. Discipline also grows when distractions are controlled. Constant interruptions weaken focus and break continuity in thought. Every time attention shifts unnecessarily, mental strength is reduced. A structured daily life requires protecting attention. This does not mean avoiding all distractions completely, but it means creating boundaries that preserve focus during important hours. A key part of disciplined living is finishing what is started. Many people begin tasks with strong intention, but stop midway when effort increases. This habit weakens trust in oneself. Finishing tasks, even when they are uncomfortable, builds internal reliability. Over time, the mind learns that commitments are not optional. This internal agreement strengthens character. Emotional control plays an important role in discipline. Daily life brings stress, frustration, and unexpected challenges. Without emotional control, actions become reactive instead of intentional. A disciplined individual learns to respond rather than react. This means taking a moment before acting, understanding the situation, and choosing behavior based on long-term benefit rather than temporary feeling. Consistency is built through repetition under different conditions. A habit is not strong if it only works when circumstances are perfect. Real discipline is tested when energy is low, when motivation is absent, or when distractions are strong. Continuing behavior under these conditions strengthens the habit deeply. This is where real growth happens. Self-accountability is another foundation of disciplined habits. When a person takes responsibility for their own actions without blaming external factors, progress becomes faster. Accountability removes excuses. It creates honesty in behavior. This honesty is essential for growth because it allows a person to see reality clearly and adjust accordingly. Tracking behavior can also support discipline. When actions are observed, awareness increases. Awareness reduces unconscious mistakes. This does not need to be complex. Simple reflection at the end of the day on what was completed and what was delayed is enough to create improvement. Awareness turns behavior into something measurable. Instead of automatic, discipline requires a stable environment. The surrounding space influences behavior more than most people realize. A disorganized environment often leads to scattered thinking. A clean and structured environment supports focus. Creating order in physical surroundings reinforces order in mental processes. This connection strengthens daily habits naturally. Another important aspect of disciplined living is time control. Without structure, time becomes fragmented. Tasks take longer and focus becomes weak. When time is organized into clear segments, attention improves. Each period of time has a purpose, which reduces confusion. This helps the mind stay engaged in one direction at a time. A disciplined life also requires the ability to delay comfort. Immediate comfort often weakens long-term results. Choosing responsibility before relaxation builds strength. This does not mean avoiding rest. It means earning rest through completion of meaningful actions. When rest is given after effort, it becomes more satisfying and guilt-free. Progress in discipline is often slow at the beginning. This is normal. The mind takes time to adjust to new patterns. Many people stop during this phase because results are not immediately visible. However, discipline works in accumulation. Each repeated action adds value, even when it is not immediately visible. Over time, these small actions create visible transformation. One of the most powerful shifts in disciplined living is identity change. A person stops thinking of discipline as something they are trying to achieve and begins to see it as part of who they are. This identity shift changes behavior naturally. When discipline becomes identity, effort decreases and consistency increases. Failures in daily habits should not be seen as permanent setbacks. They are signals that adjustment is needed. What matters is returning to the habit quickly instead of abandoning it. Recovery speed is more important than perfection. A disciplined life is not free from mistakes. It is defined by the ability to return to structure after disruption. Attention control is another essential skill. Where attention goes, energy follows. If attention is scattered across unnecessary inputs, energy becomes weak. If attention is directed toward meaningful tasks, energy becomes focused. Protecting attention is one of the strongest forms of discipline because it determines the quality of every action. Building disciplined habits also requires patience with oneself. Harsh self-judgment often leads to frustration and quitting. A steady approach allows improvement without pressure. Growth is more stable when it is guided rather than forced. The goal is not to become perfect immediately, but to become consistent over time. Over days and weeks, disciplined habits begin to compound. Actions that required effort become automatic. This is the point where personal growth becomes sustainable. The mind no longer resists the behavior because it has been repeated enough times to become natural. As discipline strengthens, confidence increases. Not emotional confidence based on temporary feelings, but deep confidence based on evidence of action. When a person repeatedly follows through on commitments, self-trust becomes stronger. This trust becomes the foundation for larger goals and responsibility. A disciplined daily structure also reduces internal conflict. Instead of constantly deciding what to do next, actions follow a clear pattern. This reduces mental fatigue. Energy is preserved for meaningful thinking and creative problem-solving. Life becomes more stable and less chaotic. The ultimate result of disciplined daily habits is transformation that does not rely on external circumstances. Even when life conditions change, the internal structure remains stable. This stability is what allows continuous growth regardless of challenges. Discipline is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in ordinary moments where choices are made without external pressure. Each small decision adds weight to character. Over time, those decisions shape a stronger, more focused and more capable version of life. Chapter 3. Strengthen mental resilience through small, repeated daily actions. Mental resilience is not built in rare moments of crisis. It is shaped quietly through how a person responds to ordinary difficulties every single day. Most people think strength appears when something big happens, but real strength is formed in small reactions that repeat over time. Every delay, every frustration, every uncomfortable task becomes a training ground for the mind. When those moments are handled with control, resilience begins to grow in a steady and reliable way. A strong mind is not one that avoids difficulty. It is one that stays steady inside difficulty. This stability does not appear instantly. It is developed through repeated exposure to small challenges that require patience and self-control. Each time a person chooses to continue instead of giving up, a layer of mental strength is added. Over time, these layers form emotional stability that is not easily shaken. Daily life provides constant opportunities to build resilience, but many of them are ignored because they appear ordinary. Waiting in line, dealing with slow progress, managing small frustrations, or completing tasks that feel repetitive all shape the mind. When these situations are handled without emotional collapse, the mind learns how to stay grounded under pressure. This grounding is the foundation of resilience. One of the most effective ways to strengthen the mind is to accept discomfort without resisting it. Resistance creates stress. Acceptance creates control. This does not mean liking discomfort. It means understanding that discomfort is temporary and useful. When the mind stops fighting simple challenges, energy is preserved and used for constructive action instead of emotional reaction. Small repeated actions play a major role in shaping emotional endurance. For example, choosing to complete a task even when there is no motivation trains the mind to act independently of feelings. Feelings become less dominant over time. This creates mental space where decisions are based on logic and purpose rather than temporary emotion. Resilience also grows when a person practices staying calm during delays. Life rarely moves at the exact speed expected. Plans shift, situations change. When frustration is allowed to take control, clarity disappears. But when patience is practiced consistently, the mind becomes more stable. Each moment of waiting becomes a chance to strengthen emotional control. Another important aspect of resilience is learning to restart after interruption. Many people lose progress when something breaks their routine. A resilient mindset does not treat interruption as failure. Instead, it treats it as a normal part of life and returns to action without hesitation. This ability to restart quickly is one of the strongest signs of mental strength. Daily repetition of small responsibilities builds emotional toughness. Simple tasks that are completed consistently, even when they feel boring or repetitive, create inner stability. The mind becomes used to following through regardless of emotional state. This reduces the influence of mood on behavior and creates a more stable internal structure. Resilience is also strengthened through controlled exposure to difficulty. Avoiding challenges weakens the mind over time. Facing manageable difficulties in daily life strengthens it. This can include doing tasks that require effort, solving problems instead of avoiding them, or taking responsibility for uncomfortable situations. Each small challenge builds tolerance for future pressure. Self-talk plays a quiet but powerful role in mental strength. The way a person speaks internally during difficulty shapes their response. Harsh internal reactions weaken resilience. Calm and grounded internal responses strengthen it. Training the mind to remain steady in self-communication creates a stable emotional environment, even during stress. Another key factor is maintaining action during low-energy states. There will always be moments when motivation is absent. In those moments, continuing small actions builds discipline in the mind. The goal is not intensity. The goal is continuity. Even minimal effort during low-energy periods reinforces the idea that progress does not depend on perfect conditions. Mental resilience is also connected to emotional recovery speed. Everyone experiences setbacks. The difference between weak and strong mental states is not whether setbacks occur, but how quickly recovery happens. A resilient person returns to balance faster after difficulty. This speed of recovery is developed through repeated practice of letting go of emotional disturbance and returning to structure. Small daily decisions also influence long-term mental strength. Choosing not to overreact, choosing to stay calm, choosing to complete tasks without emotional delay, and choosing to continue after mistakes all build resilience. These decisions may seem small in isolation, but over time they create a strong internal system that does not collapse easily. Another important element is accepting imperfection in progress. Many people weaken their own resilience by expecting perfect performance every day. When expectations are too rigid, small mistakes feel like failure. A stronger mindset understands that inconsistency is part of growth. This understanding prevents unnecessary emotional damage and supports long-term stability. Mental strength grows when attention is trained to stay on present action instead of imagined outcomes. Worry about future results often creates unnecessary stress. Focusing on the current step reduces mental pressure and increases effectiveness. Each completed step builds confidence, which further strengthens resilience. Daily reflection also supports emotional strength. At the end of the day, reviewing actions without judgment helps the mind understand progress clearly. This reflection is not about criticism. It is about awareness. Awareness reduces confusion and strengthens control over future behavior. Resilience is deeply connected to responsibility. When a person takes full responsibility for their actions, emotional dependency on external factors decreases. This creates internal control. External situations may change, but responsibility remains stable. This stability is the foundation of strong mental structure. Another key practice is continuing effort, even when results are not visible. Many people lose motivation when progress feels slow. However, resilience grows most during these quiet periods where effort continues without immediate reward. This ability to stay consistent without visible confirmation builds deep mental endurance. Emotional discipline also strengthens resilience. Instead of allowing every emotion to control behavior, a resilient mind observes emotion without being controlled by it. This distance between feeling and action creates space for better decisions. Over time, this space becomes natural and stable. Resilience is not built through avoidance of difficulty, but through repeated engagement with it in small forms. Each small challenge handled properly strengthens internal stability. These repeated experiences form a mental structure that becomes resistant to pressure. A strong mind is not one that never struggles. It is one that does not break under struggle. This stability is created slowly through daily repetition of simple behaviors that reinforce patience, control, and persistence. There is no single moment where resilience appears. It develops quietly through consistency. As these small actions accumulate, the mind begins to trust itself more. Self-trust is a major part of resilience. When a person knows they can handle discomfort, delay, and challenge, fear reduces. This reduction in fear creates more freedom in decision-making and more strength in execution. Over time, mental resilience becomes a natural part of identity. The person no longer sees themselves as fragile or easily affected. Instead, they see themselves as steady and capable of handling pressure. This identity shift is not created through thinking alone, but through repeated experience. Small daily actions may appear insignificant in the moment, but their impact on mental strength is deep and long-lasting. Each action adds a layer of control, patience, and stability. Over time, these layers create a mind that remains steady even when life becomes unpredictable. True resilience is not loud or visible. It is quiet stability built through repetition. It is the result of choosing control over reaction, persistence over avoidance, and action over hesitation every single day. Chapter 4. Practice gratitude every day to improve emotional stability. Emotional stability is not something that appears naturally without effort. It is shaped through what the mind repeatedly focuses on throughout the day. When attention is constantly directed towards stress, lack, and problems, the internal state becomes unstable. When attention is trained toward appreciation of what already exists, the mind begins to settle into balance. Gratitude is not a passive feeling. It is an active mental practice that changes how experiences are interpreted. Most emotional instability comes from the habit of overlooking what is already present and focusing only on what is missing. This creates internal pressure because the mind is always measuring life against an imagined version of perfection. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. It redirects attention to reality as it is, not as it is feared or expected to be. This shift reduces unnecessary emotional tension and creates a more grounded state of mind. Practicing gratitude every day begins with awareness of simple things that are often ignored. Breathing without difficulty, having access to food, being able to move freely, or having a place to rest are basic elements of life that carry stability. When these are recognized intentionally, the mind stops treating them as invisible. This recognition reduces the feeling of constant dissatisfaction that quietly affects emotional balance. Gratitude is not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It is about creating balance in perception. Challenges can exist at the same time as appreciation. When both are acknowledged, the emotional system becomes more stable. Without gratitude, challenges dominate attention. With gratitude, perspective becomes wider and more controlled. A daily gratitude practice reshapes how the mind processes events. Instead of reacting immediately with frustration or disappointment, the mind learns to pause and identify something that is still working or still available. This pause creates space between event and reaction. In that space, emotional control becomes possible. Over time, this pause becomes automatic and stabilizes emotional responses. Small, repeated gratitude actions have stronger impact than occasional deep reflection. A simple daily habit of noticing a few positive aspects of life trains the mind consistently. This repetition slowly rewires attention. The brain begins to search for stability instead of constantly scanning for problems. This does not remove difficulties, but it reduces emotional overwhelm. Emotional instability often grows when attention is fixed only on future uncertainty. The mind creates scenarios that do not exist yet, leading to stress and tension. Gratitude brings attention back to present reality. It anchors awareness in what is already real instead of what might happen. This grounding effect reduces unnecessary emotional noise. Another important aspect of gratitude is learning to appreciate effort, not just outcomes. Many people only feel satisfaction when results are perfect. This creates emotional dependency on success. When effort itself is valued, emotional stability increases because progress becomes meaningful even before final results appear. This reduces frustration during slow growth periods. Gratitude also strengthens emotional recovery after setbacks. Instead of remaining stuck in disappointment, the mind learns to recognize what remains intact. Even after failure, there are always elements that are still stable, such as experience gained or lessons learned. Recognizing these elements allows the mind to return to balance faster instead of staying in emotional disturbance. A consistent gratitude habit also changes internal dialogue. Without awareness, the mind often repeats negative interpretations of events. This internal repetition increases emotional pressure. When gratitude becomes part of thinking, the internal dialogue becomes more balanced. Negative interpretation is no longer the only voice present. This balance creates emotional steadiness. Practicing gratitude in difficult moments is especially powerful. When life feels heavy, the mind naturally narrows its focus to problems. Intentionally noticing something stable or supportive during these moments prevents emotional collapse. It does not remove difficulty, but it prevents difficulty from taking complete control of perception. Gratitude also improves emotional stability by reducing comparison with others. Comparison often creates dissatisfaction because it shifts attention away from personal reality. When attention returns to what is already present and functioning, emotional pressure from comparison decreases. This allows the mind to operate from a more grounded position. Another important effect of gratitude is improved patience. When the mind recognizes value in current circumstances, it becomes less impatient with slow progress. Patience grows naturally when appreciation replaces urgency. This reduces emotional frustration during long-term goals and creates a calmer mindset toward growth. Daily gratitude practice does not need to be complex. It can be a quiet moment of reflection where attention is directed toward specific experiences or simple truths of the day. The key is consistency, not intensity. Repeated recognition of positive elements gradually stabilizes emotional patterns. Over time, gratitude changes the emotional baseline of a person. Instead of starting from a place of dissatisfaction or tension, the mind begins to operate from a more neutral or positive foundation. This baseline shift is subtle but powerful because it influences how every situation is interpreted. Emotional stability also improves when gratitude is connected to relationships. Recognizing the presence of supportive people, even in small ways, strengthens emotional grounding. Human connection becomes more meaningful when it is acknowledged consciously rather than taken for granted. This awareness reduces feelings of isolation. Another effect of gratitude is reduced emotional reactivity. When the mind is trained to notice positive aspects regularly, it becomes less sensitive to minor frustrations. Small disturbances no longer trigger strong emotional reactions because the mind is balanced by a broader perspective. Gratitude also strengthens self-perception. When attention is directed toward what is working in life, including personal effort and growth, self-respect increases. This reduces internal criticism and creates a more stable emotional identity. A person becomes less dependent on external validation for emotional balance. A key transformation that occurs through gratitude is the shift from scarcity thinking to sufficiency thinking. Scarcity thinking constantly focuses on what is missing, which creates emotional pressure. Sufficiency thinking recognizes what is already present, which creates emotional calm. This shift is gradual but deeply stabilizing. Practicing gratitude does not mean ignoring improvement. It means building emotional stability while still moving forward. A stable mind is more capable of growth than an unstable one because it can handle challenges without collapsing emotionally. Gratitude supports this stability by balancing perception. As gratitude becomes a consistent habit, emotional reactions become less extreme. High-stress situations feel less overwhelming, and positive moments feel more genuine. This emotional balance creates a steady internal environment that supports better decision-making and clearer thinking. Over time, gratitude becomes less of a practice and more of a natural way of seeing life. The mind automatically begins to recognize value in ordinary experiences. This automatic recognition reduces emotional effort and increases stability without constant conscious control. Emotional stability is not achieved by removing challenges from life, but by changing how the mind relates to them. Gratitude is one of the most direct ways to create this shift. It trains attention to include balance instead of focusing only on difficulty. A life guided by daily gratitude becomes less emotionally reactive and more grounded. The mind becomes steadier not because circumstances change, but because perception changes. This internal stability becomes a foundation for long-term growth, clarity, and resilience in all areas of life. Chapter 5. Eliminate distractions and focus on meaningful daily priorities. Focus is not a natural state in modern life. It is something that must be protected with intention every single day. Without protection, attention gets pulled in many directions, leaving little energy for what actually matters. Distractions do not only waste time, they slowly weaken clarity, reduce productivity, and create a sense of unfinished progress. When attention is scattered, life feels busy but not meaningful. Eliminating distractions is not about removing everything from life. It is about choosing what deserves attention and what does not. Every moment of attention spent on something unimportant is a moment taken away from something valuable. This is why focus is directly connected to the quality of a person's life. What receives attention becomes stronger. What is ignored fades away. Most distractions are not powerful on their own. They become powerful because of repeated access. Small habits like checking a device frequently, reacting to notifications, or switching tasks without completion slowly fragment the mind. Over time, this fragmentation reduces the ability to think deeply. A scattered mind struggles to complete meaningful work because it is constantly shifting direction. Building focus begins with awareness of attention patterns. Many people do not realize how often their attention changes without intention. Observing these patterns is the first step toward control. When a person becomes aware of how often they are pulled away from important tasks, they begin to regain control naturally. Awareness creates distance, and distance creates choice. Meaningful priorities must be clearly defined before distractions can be eliminated. Without clarity, everything feels equally important, and the mind jumps from one thing to another. When priorities are defined, decisions become easier. The mind no longer wastes energy deciding what matters. Instead, it follows a clear direction. This clarity reduces confusion and strengthens focus. Daily priorities should be simple and realistic. Trying to focus on too many things at once weakens effectiveness. A small number of important tasks completed with full attention is more valuable than many tasks completed with divided focus. Depth's more powerful than volume when it comes to meaningful progress. One of the strongest ways to reduce distraction is to control the environment. The surrounding space has a direct impact on attention. A cluttered environment encourages scattered thinking. A clean and structured environment supports focused thinking. When the environment is organized, the mind follows the same structure. This connection makes concentration easier without forcing it. Another important step is reducing unnecessary input. Constant exposure to information creates mental overload. The mind becomes filled with content that does not support current goals. When input is reduced, clarity increases. Silence and simplicity allow the mind to focus on what truly matters instead of reacting to endless external signals. Attention also weakens when tasks are interrupted repeatedly. Each interruption breaks mental flow and makes it harder to return to deep focus. Protecting uninterrupted time is essential for meaningful work. When the mind is allowed to stay in one direction for longer periods, productivity and understanding increase significantly. Discipline plays a key role in maintaining focus. Without discipline, distractions always win, because they require less effort than meaningful tasks. Discipline is the ability to continue working on what matters even when the mind seeks easier alternatives. This ability is developed through repetition, not motivation. Each time focus is maintained despite distraction, mental strength increases. A powerful method to eliminate distractions is delaying reaction. Not every thought or notification requires immediate attention. When reaction is delayed, control increases. The mind begins to understand it does not need to respond instantly to every signal. This delay creates space for intentional decision-making instead of automatic behavior. Meaningful priorities must also be connected to purpose. When tasks feel meaningful, focus becomes easier to maintain. Purpose gives direction to effort. Without purpose, tasks feel like obligations. With purpose, tasks feel like steps towards something important. This shift changes how the mind approaches daily work. Energy management is also linked to focus. Mental energy is not unlimited. When it is wasted on distractions, less remains for meaningful tasks. Protecting energy means avoiding unnecessary engagement and directing strength toward important actions. Focus improves when energy is preserved instead of scattered. Another important factor is learning to complete tasks before starting new ones. Switching between tasks reduces quality and increases mental fatigue. Completion creates clarity. Each finished task reduces mental load and frees attention for the next priority. This cycle builds momentum and strengthens focus naturally. Emotional control also supports concentration. Emotional reactions often trigger distraction. Frustration, boredom, or stress can lead the mind away from important work. When emotions are observed without immediate reaction, focus remains stable. This stability allows consistent progress even during challenging moments. Digital distractions are among the strongest interruptions in modern life. Constant access to information creates a habit of checking instead of focusing. Reducing unnecessary digital engagement restores attention. When the mind is no longer constantly pulled toward external updates, it becomes easier to stay present with meaningful work. A focused life is built through repetition of intentional choices. Every time a distraction is avoided and attention is returned to a priority, focus becomes stronger. These small decisions may seem insignificant, but they accumulate into a powerful habit of concentration. Over time, focus becomes the default state instead of distraction. Clarity of thought increases when distractions are removed. Without constant interruptions, thinking becomes deeper and more structured. Problems become easier to understand and solve. Creativity also improves because the mind has space to explore ideas without interruption. Another important aspect of focus is learning to accept boredom. Many distractions exist because the mind avoids moments of stillness or repetition. However, boredom is often the space where deeper thinking begins. When the mind learns to stay present without seeking stimulation, focus becomes stronger and more stable. Prioritization also requires saying no to non-essential activities. Every yes to something unnecessary is a no to something important. Protecting priorities means being selective about commitments. This selectiveness ensures that time and energy are directed toward meaningful progress instead of scattered effort. A focused mind is not one that never gets distracted. It is one that quickly returns to what matters. The ability to refocus is just as important as the ability to avoid distraction. Each return strengthens mental discipline and reduces the power of distractions over time. Consistency is the foundation of focus. occasional concentration does not create lasting results. Daily repetition of focused effort builds deep capability. Over time, the mind becomes trained to stay on task longer without resistance. This training creates stability in performance and thinking. Eliminating distractions is ultimately about reclaiming control over attention. Attention is one of the most valuable resources a person has. When it is controlled, life becomes intentional. When it is uncontrolled, life becomes reactive. Focus determines direction, and direction determines outcome. A life built on meaningful priorities feels more stable and productive. Instead of constant mental noise, there is clarity. Instead of scattered effort, there is progress. Instead of distraction-driven behavior, there is intentional action. This transformation does not happen instantly. It is built through repeated choices that protect attention and strengthen focus every single day. Chapter 6. Track daily progress to build strong self-awareness. Self-awareness does not develop by chance. It is built through consistent observation of one's own behavior over time. Most people assume they understand themselves, yet their understanding is often based on memory or emotion rather than clear evidence. Without tracking daily actions, perception becomes distorted, progress feels unclear, habits feel random, and improvement becomes difficult to measure. Tracking daily progress removes this uncertainty and replaces it with clarity. Every action a person takes leaves behind information about their habits, discipline, and decisions. When this information is ignored, growth becomes invisible. When it is observed, patterns begin to appear. These patterns reveal strengths and weaknesses that are not obvious in the moment. Self-awareness grows when behavior is seen clearly instead of assumed. Tracking progress is not about perfection. It is about honesty. It requires observing what was actually done, not what was intended. Many people live based on intentions, but intentions alone do not create results. Only actions create results. When daily actions are recorded, the gap between intention and reality becomes visible. This visibility is the beginning of improvement. A simple method of tracking can be more powerful than complex systems. The goal is not to create pressure, but to create awareness. Even a basic record of completed tasks, habits followed, and goals worked on is enough to build understanding. Over time, this simple record becomes a mirror that reflects real behavior without distortion. Self-awareness increases when patterns are repeated and observed over time. One day does not reveal much. A week shows early tendencies. A month reveals habits. Long-term tracking reveals identity. This gradual visibility allows a person to understand not only what they do, but why they do it. This understanding is essential for meaningful change. Without tracking, small failures go unnoticed. When failures are unnoticed, they repeat without correction. Tracking brings attention to these small behaviors before they become long-term limitations. This early awareness prevents negative patterns from becoming permanent habits. Awareness is the first step toward correction. Progress tracking also strengthens accountability. When actions are recorded, it becomes harder to ignore responsibility. There is a clear record of what was done and what was avoided. This honesty builds discipline naturally because the mind becomes more conscious of its decisions. Accountability transforms behavior by making it visible. Another important benefit of tracking is motivation through evidence. Motivation based on emotion is unstable. Motivation based on evidence is stronger. When a person can see consistent progress, even small progress, it builds confidence. This confidence comes not from feeling, but from proof. Evidence of effort creates trust in one's own ability to continue. Tracking daily progress also improves decision-making. When past behavior is visible, future choices become more informed. Instead of guessing what works, a person can observe what has already been effective. This reduces wasted effort and increases efficiency. Decisions become based on reality rather than assumption. Self-awareness grows deeper when tracking includes not only achievements but also behaviors that need improvement. Honest observation of distractions, delays, and unproductive habits creates balance in understanding. This balance is necessary because growth requires recognition of both strengths and weaknesses. Without acknowledging weaknesses, improvement becomes incomplete. Daily tracking also helps identify triggers. Certain situations, emotions, or environments often lead to specific behaviors. When these connections are observed regularly, it becomes easier to understand why actions occur. This understanding allows a person to make intentional adjustments instead of repeating unconscious patterns. Progress tracking also reduces mental confusion. Without records, the mind tries to remember everything, which leads to distortion. Memory is not always accurate. Written or recorded progress provides clarity that memory cannot. This clarity reduces stress and allows the mind to focus on improvement instead of recall. Another important effect of tracking is increased consistency. When actions are recorded daily, there is a natural desire to maintain continuity. Breaking the pattern feels noticeable, which encourages stability. Over time, this creates a stronger commitment to habits because inconsistency becomes more visible. Tracking also creates a sense of direction. Without awareness of progress, effort can feel random. With tracking, movement becomes visible. Even slow progress becomes meaningful when it is recorded. This sense of direction helps maintain long-term commitment, even when results are not immediate. Self-awareness improves when reflection becomes part of tracking. At the end of the day, reviewing actions helps connect behavior with outcomes. This reflection is not about judgment but understanding. It helps identify what worked, what did not, and what needs adjustment. This continuous feedback loop strengthens personal growth. Another key aspect is emotional awareness. Tracking daily progress often reveals how emotions influence actions. It becomes clear how mood affects productivity, decisions, and discipline. This awareness allows better emotional regulation over time. Instead of being controlled by emotions, a person begins to observe them and respond with intention. Progress tracking also builds patience. Growth is often slow, and without visible records, it can feel like nothing is changing. Tracking reveals gradual improvement that might otherwise be overlooked. This visible progress encourages patience and reduces frustration during slow periods. Self-awareness is also strengthened through pattern recognition. When data from daily actions accumulates, patterns become visible. These patterns reveal habits that either support or block progress. Recognizing these patterns allows targeted improvement instead of random effort. Tracking daily progress also improves honesty with oneself. It removes the gap between perception and reality. Many people believe they are more consistent or productive than they actually are. Tracking reveals the truth without distortion. This truth, although sometimes uncomfortable, is necessary for real growth. A key transformation that occurs through tracking is ownership of behavior. Instead of blaming circumstances, a person begins to see their own role in outcomes. This ownership strengthens responsibility and reduces external dependency. Growth becomes internal rather than dependent on outside factors. Another benefit is improved focus on our priorities. When progress is tracked, it becomes clear where time and energy are actually going. This awareness helps correct our alignment between goals and actions. It ensures that daily behavior supports long-term direction. Tracking also strengthens discipline indirectly. When actions are visible, there is greater awareness of choices. This awareness encourages better decisions without forcing discipline. Over time, this leads to natural consistency in behavior. Self-awareness deepens when tracking includes both success and failure. Success shows what to repeat. Failure shows what to adjust. Both are necessary for complete understanding. Ignoring either creates incomplete awareness. Balanced tracking creates balanced growth. As tracking becomes a daily habit, it transforms the way a person sees themselves. Identity becomes clearer because behavior is no longer abstract. It is documented, observed, and understood. This clarity strengthens self-perception and reduces confusion about personal direction. Over time, tracking daily progress builds a strong internal feedback system. Instead of relying on external validation, a person learns from their own records. This internal system becomes more reliable than memory or emotion. It provides steady guidance for improvement. Self-awareness is not a single realization. It is a continuous process of observation and adjustment. Tracking daily progress ensures that this process remains active. It turns personal growth into something visible, structured, and intentional. A life guided by self-awareness becomes more stable and purposeful. Actions are no longer random. They are informed by evidence of past behavior. Growth becomes measurable, and improvement becomes continuous. This is how small daily tracking builds a deeper understanding of self and creates lasting personal development. Chapter 7. Replace negative habits with positive, consistent daily routines. Negative habits do not disappear on their own. They stay in place because they are repeated, often without awareness, until they become part of daily life. Many people try to remove bad habits through sudden effort, but removal alone is not enough. A habit leaves a gap, and if that gap is not filled with something structured, the old behavior tends to return. Real change happens when negative habits are replaced with positive routines that are repeated with consistency. Every habit exists because it once provided comfort, distraction, or relief. Even harmful behaviors usually begin as a way to reduce stress or avoid difficulty. This is why simply stopping a habit creates resistance. The mind is not only letting go of an action, but also of a familiar coping pattern. Replacement is more effective than removal because it gives the mind a new structure to follow instead of leaving emptiness. To replace a negative habit, it is important to first recognize the trigger that leads to it. Every repeated behavior has a starting point. It may be a specific time of day, a feeling, or an environment. When the trigger is identified, it becomes possible to interrupt the automatic response. Awareness is the first step in breaking unconscious repetition. Once the trigger is known, a positive routine must be attached to it. The new behavior should be simple enough to perform without resistance. Complexity weakens consistency. When a positive action is easy to repeat, it gradually takes the place of the old habit. Over time, repetition strengthens the new pattern until it becomes natural. Consistency is more important than intensity when building new routines. Many people attempt dramatic change, but intensity without repetition fades quickly. Small actions repeated daily create stronger results because they integrate into identity. The mind adapts slowly, and repetition allows it to accept new behavior as normal. Negative habits often survive because they provide immediate reward. The mind prefers instant satisfaction, even if the long-term result is harmful. Positive routines may not feel rewarding at first, but they build lasting stability. The key is to stay consistent long enough for the new behavior to create its own sense of reward through progress and improvement. Replacing habits requires patience with discomfort. The early stage of change often feels unnatural because the old behavior is still strong in memory. This discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that change is happening. Staying consistent during this stage is what allows transformation to take root. Environment plays a strong role in habit replacement. If the surroundings support old behavior, change becomes harder. Adjusting the environment can reduce temptation and make positive routines easier to follow. Small changes in physical space can significantly influence behavior by reducing friction for new actions and increasing friction for old ones. Another important factor is timing. Replacing a habit at the same time it usually occurs helps build consistency. When a new routine is placed in the exact moment where the old habit used to exist, the mind learns to associate that time with a different action. This repetition rewires the pattern gradually. Emotional awareness is also important during this process. Negative habits are often linked to emotional states such as stress, boredom, or frustration. When these emotions appear, the mind automatically seeks relief through familiar behavior. Recognizing this connection allows a person to pause and choose a different response instead of reacting automatically. A strong replacement habit should serve a similar purpose to the old one, but in a healthier direction. For example, if a habit exists to relieve stress, the new routine should also provide calm but without harmful effects. This ensures that the underlying need is still being addressed, which increases the chance of success. Repetition slowly changes identity. At first, a new routine feels like something being attempted. Over time, it becomes something that feels normal. Eventually, it becomes part of how a person sees themselves. This identity shift is what makes habit change permanent. When behavior aligns with identity, resistance decreases naturally. Setbacks are a normal part of replacing habits. There will be moments when old patterns return. These moments should not be seen as failure, but as information. They reveal where adjustment is needed. What matters most is returning to the new routine quickly instead of abandoning it completely. Recovery strengthens the new pattern more than perfection ever could. Awareness during daily life helps prevent automatic return to old habits. When attention is present in the moment, choices become intentional instead of unconscious. This awareness creates space between impulse and action. Allowing better decisions to be made, positive routines become stronger when they are linked to existing habits. This method creates a chain of behavior where one action naturally leads to another. When a new habit is attached to something already established, it becomes easier to maintain because it does not rely on memory alone. Consistency in small actions builds momentum. Each time a positive routine is completed, it strengthens the likelihood of repeating it again. This repetition builds internal stability. Over time, the new habit requires less effort and becomes part of the daily structure without resistance. Replacing habits also requires removing judgment from the process. Harsh self-criticism often weakens progress because it creates emotional pressure. A calm and steady approach allows change to happen gradually. Growth is more stable when it is guided rather than forced. Another important element is patience with results. Habit change does not produce immediate transformation. The effects appear slowly through repeated action. Many people give up because they expect quick results. Understanding that change is gradual helps maintain consistency during early stages. The mind adapts through repetition, not instruction. Simply knowing that a habit should change is not enough. The new behavior must be practiced repeatedly until it becomes familiar. This repetition creates neural and behavioral shifts that make the new routine stable. As negative habits are replaced, energy begins to shift. Instead of being drained by repeated harmful behavior, energy becomes available for more productive actions. This creates a sense of progress that reinforces the new routine. Over time, positive habits begin to support each other. One routine strengthens another, creating a structured daily system. This system reduces reliance on willpower because behavior becomes automatic. Life becomes more stable as routines replace randomness. The final stage of habit replacement is freedom. At this point, old habits no longer feel strong because new patterns have taken their place. The mind no longer feels pulled in two directions. Instead, there is clarity in behavior and direction. Replacing negative habits with positive daily routines is not a single decision. It is a continuous process of awareness, repetition, and adjustment. Each small choice contributes to long-term transformation. Over time, these choices build a life that feels more controlled, stable, and aligned with personal growth. Chapter 8. Commit fully to small improvements every single day. Real transformation does not come from sudden breakthroughs or rare moments of inspiration. It comes from small improvements that are repeated every day without interruption. Most people underestimate the power of small progress because it does not feel dramatic. However, life is not changed by dramatic actions. It is changed by consistent behavior that builds over time until the results become visible in every area of life. Commitment to small improvements requires a shift in thinking. Instead of waiting for large changes, attention must move towards small actions that can be completed today. These actions may seem simple, but their impact grows when they are repeated daily. A small improvement today becomes a stronger foundation tomorrow. Over time, these small steps accumulate into a completely different level of performance and stability. Many people fail to grow because they expect change to feel significant in the beginning. When progress feels small, they assume it is not working. This misunderstanding leads to inconsistency. In reality, small improvements are the only type of progress that lasts. They integrate into daily life without resistance and slowly reshape behavior, without forcing the mind into discomfort. Commitment means showing up even when the improvement feels minor. It means choosing progress even when results are not immediately visible. This kind of discipline builds trust in oneself. Each time a small improvement is completed, it reinforces the belief that consistency matters more than intensity. This belief becomes the foundation for long-term growth. A powerful way to approach small improvements is to focus on one area at a time. Trying to improve everything at once creates pressure and confusion. Focused improvement allows energy to be directed clearly. When attention is not divided, even small actions produce meaningful results. Over time, focused repetition creates strong behavioral change. Daily improvement does not require perfect conditions. It only requires willingness to act under normal circumstances. Waiting for ideal situations delays progress. Small improvements are designed to fit into everyday life. They are flexible enough to be completed even during busy or difficult days. This flexibility is what makes them sustainable. Commitment to small progress also builds mental discipline. Every time a small improvement is completed, the mind learns to value consistency. This repetition strengthens internal structure. Discipline is not created in large moments of effort, but in repeated decisions to continue when it would be easier to stop. Small improvements also reduce resistance. Large changes often trigger hesitation because they feel overwhelming. Small actions feel manageable, which makes them easier to start. Once action begins, momentum builds naturally. This momentum is what turns small effort into steady progress. Over time, small improvements reshape identity. A person who consistently improves begins to see themselves differently. Instead of identifying as someone who struggles with change, they begin to see themselves as someone who grows steadily. This identity shift is powerful because behavior follows identity. When identity changes, actions become more aligned with growth. Commitment also requires patience with progress. Small improvements do not produce immediate transformation. They work quietly in the background, building strength over time. Many people give up too early because they cannot see instant results. Understanding that growth is gradual allows consistency to continue without frustration. Another important aspect of small improvements is awareness of daily effort. When a person recognizes even minor progress, motivation becomes more stable. This awareness prevents discouragement. It helps the mind see that movement is happening even when it is not dramatic. This recognition strengthens persistence. Small improvements also create stability in behavior. Instead of unpredictable bursts of effort followed by long breaks, consistent small actions create a steady rhythm. This rhythm becomes part of daily life. Stability is more powerful than intensity because it creates predictable progress. Each small improvement also strengthens confidence. Confidence is not built from thinking positively, but from repeated evidence of action. When a person consistently completes small improvements, they build trust in their own ability to follow through. This trust becomes the foundation for larger goals in the future. Commitment to daily improvement also reduces fear of failure. When focus is on small steps, mistakes become less overwhelming. Failure is no longer seen as something large or damaging. It becomes part of the learning process. This reduces emotional pressure and allows continued action even after setbacks. Small improvements also support long-term vision. Large goals often feel distant and difficult to reach. Breaking them into small daily actions makes progress visible. Each day becomes meaningful because it contributes to a larger direction. This connection between daily effort and long-term purpose strengthens motivation. Consistency is the core of small improvement. Without consistency, even meaningful actions lose impact. Repetition turns small effort into lasting change. Each repeated action strengthens the habit and reduces resistance over time. Eventually, what once required effort becomes automatic. Another important element is self-honesty. Commitment requires recognizing whether small improvements are actually being completed. Without honesty, progress becomes unclear. Honest reflection ensures that actions align with intentions. This alignment is necessary for real growth. Small improvements also influence mindset. When a person focuses on improving a little every day, they begin to see life as something that is always evolving. This mindset reduces stagnation. Instead of waiting for major change, they begin to actively participate in shaping their own progress. Daily improvement also creates momentum in other areas of life. When one area improves consistently, it influences others naturally. Discipline in one behavior often spreads to others. This creates a chain reaction of positive change without needing constant force. Commitment to small improvements requires letting go of perfection. Perfection creates pressure and slows progress. Small improvements accept imperfection and focus on movement instead of flawlessness. This acceptance allows progress to continue even when conditions are not ideal. Over time, small improvements accumulate into visible transformation. What once seemed insignificant becomes powerful through repetition. The mind begins to recognize the results of consistent effort. This recognition strengthens motivation and reinforces the habit of improvement. Small daily improvements also build emotional stability. When progress is steady, there is less frustration about slow growth. The mind becomes calm because it understands that improvement is ongoing. This reduces emotional fluctuations and creates a more balanced mindset. Commitment also teaches resilience. There will be days when improvement feels difficult or unimportant. Continuing anyway builds strength. These moments are where real discipline is developed. Persistence during ordinary days creates extraordinary long-term results. Each small improvement is a signal to the mind that growth is active. Over time, these signals accumulate into a strong internal system of progress. The mind becomes trained to expect improvement as part of daily life, rather than something occasional. The power of small improvements lies in their simplicity. They do not require complex systems or extreme effort. They require only consistency and intention. This simplicity makes them sustainable over long periods, which is what makes them effective. Commitment to small daily improvements is ultimately a commitment to long-term transformation. It is the understanding that real change does not come from rare effort, but from repeated action. Each day becomes an opportunity to move slightly forward. Over time, these small movements create a completely different life direction built on stability, discipline, and continuous growth. Chapter 9. Overcome procrastination by taking immediate daily action steps. Procrastination is not a sign of laziness. It is a habit of delaying action even when the task is understood. Many people know what needs to be done but still avoid starting. This delay creates pressure, guilt, and mental clutter. Over time, the weight of unfinished tasks becomes heavier than the tasks themselves. The real problem is not lack of knowledge, but lack of immediate action. Breaking procrastination begins with understanding that the first moment of action is the most important. Once action begins, resistance decreases. The mind often creates difficulty before starting, but that difficulty is mostly mental rather than real. When a task is approached immediately, it becomes easier than expected. The delay is what increases pressure, not the task itself. Immediate action removes space for overthinking. When too much time is spent thinking about what to do, doubt grows. Doubt weakens motivation and increases hesitation. Taking action right away interrupts this cycle. It forces the mind to move from thought to execution. This shift is what weakens procrastination over time. One of the strongest methods to overcome delay is to reduce the size of the first step. Large tasks feel overwhelming because the mind focuses on the entire effort instead of the starting point. When the first step is made extremely small, action becomes easier. Once movement begins, the rest of the task becomes more manageable. Procrastination often grows in environments where distractions are easily available. When attention is constantly pulled in different directions, starting becomes harder. Creating conditions that support action helps reduce delay. A structured environment encourages immediate movement instead of hesitation. Another important factor is emotional resistance. Tasks are often delayed not because they are difficult, but because they feel uncomfortable. The mind avoids discomfort by seeking easier activities. However, growth requires moving through this discomfort instead of avoiding it. Each time discomfort is faced directly, resistance becomes weaker. Immediate action builds momentum. Once a task is started, energy begins to flow naturally. The hardest part is always the beginning. After that, progress becomes easier. This momentum is what transforms intention into completion. Without starting, momentum cannot exist. Procrastination also reduces when attention is shifted from outcome to process. Focusing too much on final results can create pressure. This pressure makes starting more difficult. When focus is placed on the next simple action instead of the full outcome, the mind becomes more willing to engage. Daily habits play a key role in eliminating delay. When action becomes part of routine, less decision-making is required. This reduces mental resistance. A structured daily system makes it easier to act without hesitation because behavior is already defined. Another powerful approach is the habit of starting without preparation. Waiting for the perfect moment or perfect conditions often leads to delay. Action does not require perfect readiness. It only requires willingness to begin. Starting with what is available reduces the influence of excuses. Procrastination weakens when self-awareness increases. When a person notices the moment they begin to delay, they gain the ability to interrupt it. Awareness creates space between thought and action. In that space, a new decision can be made. Without awareness, delay happens automatically. Immediate action also builds self-trust. Each time a task is started without delay, the mind learns that action is possible without hesitation. This repeated experience strengthens confidence in one's ability to follow through. Over time, this trust reduces resistance naturally. Another important element is breaking the connection between feeling and action. Many people wait for motivation before starting. However, motivation is not required for action. Action itself creates motivation. When movement begins first, mental energy follows. This reverses the usual pattern of waiting for readiness. Procrastination often grows when tasks feel undefined. Unclear tasks are harder to start because the mind does not know where to begin. Clarifying the first step removes confusion. When direction is clear, action becomes easier. Simplicity in planning leads to speed in execution. Immediate action also reduces mental overload. When tasks are delayed, they remain in the mind and create constant background pressure. Starting tasks removes this mental weight. Even partial progress reduces stress because the task is no longer inactive. Consistency plays a major role in overcoming procrastination. One moment of action is not enough. Repeated immediate action builds a pattern. Over time, the mind becomes trained to respond quickly instead of delaying. This training changes behavior at a deep level. Another important aspect is accepting imperfect action. Many delays happen because people wait for perfect execution. However, perfection is not required to begin. Action can be adjusted later. Starting imperfectly is better than not starting at all. Progress always begins with incomplete effort. Energy management also influences procrastination. When mental energy is wasted on unnecessary activities, starting important tasks becomes harder. Protecting energy for meaningful actions makes it easier to begin without resistance. Focused energy supports immediate movement. Immediate action also changes perception of time. When tasks are delayed, they feel larger and more stressful. When tasks are started quickly, they feel smaller and more manageable. The way a task is perceived depends on whether action has begun or not. Another key factor is removing unnecessary decisions. Decision fatigue increases procrastination. When too many choices are available, the mind hesitates. A structured plan reduces decisions and makes action automatic. Fewer decisions lead to faster execution. Progress grows faster when action is taken immediately rather than postponed. Even small actions completed right away create forward movement. This movement builds confidence and reduces the tendency to delay future tasks. Procrastination also weakens when attention is directed to the present moment. Thinking too far ahead creates pressure about what needs to be done later. Focusing only on the next action step reduces emotional resistance and makes starting easier. Immediate action builds discipline through repetition. Each time delay is avoided, discipline strengthens. This repeated behavior creates a new pattern where action becomes the default response instead of hesitation. Over time, immediate action changes identity. A person begins to see themselves as someone who acts without delay. This identity shift reduces internal conflict because behavior aligns with self-perception. When identity supports action, procrastination naturally decreases. The process of overcoming procrastination is not about eliminating all hesitation permanently. It is about reducing the time between thought and action. The shorter this gap becomes, the more productive and focused a person becomes. A life guided by immediate action is a life with less pressure and more clarity. Tasks are completed before they accumulate. Mental space remains clear. Progress becomes steady instead of delayed. This stability is created through consistent practice of starting without waiting. Procrastination loses power when action becomes immediate, simple, and consistent. Each small decision to begin right away strengthens control over behavior. Over time, these decisions build a lifestyle where movement replaces delay and progress replaces hesitation. Chapter 10. Maintain discipline through simple, repeatable life systems. Discipline becomes stable when it is no longer dependent on willpower. Willpower is inconsistent because it changes with mood, energy, and external pressure. A stronger approach is to build simple, repeatable systems that guide behavior automatically. When life is organized through decisions become easier and actions become more consistent. Instead of relying on motivation, the structure itself leads behavior. A life system is a set of repeated actions that happen in a predictable order. These actions remove uncertainty and reduce the need for constant decision-making. When the mind knows what comes next, energy is preserved. Without systems, every day requires new choices, and those choices slowly drain mental strength. With systems, behavior flows naturally because the structure is already defined. Discipline is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about doing the same important things consistently without interruption. Repetition is what creates its stability. When actions are repeated daily in a simple format, they become part of identity. The mind no longer debates whether to perform them. It simply follows the established pattern. Simple systems work better than complex ones because complexity creates resistance. When routines are too complicated, the mind avoids them. When routines are simple, they are easier to maintain even on difficult days. Simplicity removes friction, and reduced friction increases consistency. A strong system starts with predictable structure. Certain actions happen at the same time each day, in the same order. This repetition trains the mind to operate with less hesitation. Over time, behavior becomes automatic, and discipline no longer feels like effort. It becomes a natural rhythm. Systems also protect focus. When daily actions are pre-planned, there is less time wasted deciding what to do next. This reduces mental clutter and allows attention to stay on execution. Clarity in structure creates clarity in action. The more organized the system, the more stable the output. Another important part of maintaining discipline is reducing dependence on emotional states. Without systems, behavior changes based on mood. On good days, productivity is high. On difficult days, progress stops. Systems remove this inconsistency by ensuring that actions continue regardless of emotional condition. This creates stability even during low-energy periods. Consistency grows when systems are designed around reality, not ideal conditions. Many people create routines that only work when everything goes well. When conditions change, the system breaks. A strong system works in both easy and difficult situations. It is flexible enough to adapt, but structured enough to continue. Stable systems also reduce decision fatigue. Every decision consumes mental energy. When too many decisions are required daily, discipline weakens. A repeatable system removes unnecessary decisions by defining actions in advance. This allows the mind to focus on execution rather than planning. Repetition is the core of system building. Each repeated action strengthens the system and reduces resistance. Over time, repetition creates familiarity. Familiar actions require less effort, which makes discipline easier to maintain. What once required conscious effort becomes automatic behavior. Systems also create accountability through structure. When actions are scheduled and repeated, it becomes easier to notice when something is missing. This visibility helps maintain consistency. Without structure, missed actions go unnoticed. With structure, gaps are clearly visible, which encourages correction. A disciplined system does not need to be large. In fact, smaller systems are more effective. A few well-designed habits repeated daily are more powerful than many inconsistent efforts. The goal is not quantity but reliability. A reliable system produces steady results over time. Another key element is reducing friction in starting actions. When systems are designed to be easy to begin, they are more likely to be followed. Difficulty at the start often leads to delay. Simplicity at the start encourages immediate action. Over time, starting becomes automatic. Systems also help manage energy more effectively. When actions are structured, energy is not wasted on unnecessary thinking. This allows mental resources to be used for execution. Controlled energy leads to better performance and less exhaustion. Discipline becomes more stable when systems include recovery. Rest is not separate from discipline. It is part of it. A system that includes time for recovery prevents burnout and maintains long-term consistency. Without recovery, discipline becomes unstable and eventually collapses. Another important aspect is adaptability. Life changes, and systems must be able to adjust without breaking. A flexible system allows modifications while maintaining structure. This flexibility ensures that discipline continues even when circumstances shift. Systems also reduce reliance on motivation. Motivation is temporary and unpredictable. A system does not depend on how a person feels. It continues regardless of emotional variation. This independence from motivation is what creates long-lasting discipline. Over time, systems create identity reinforcement. When actions are repeated daily, they begin to define how a person sees themselves. A person who consistently follows structured systems begins to identify as disciplined. This identity strengthens behavior further, creating a positive cycle of consistency. Stable systems also reduce stress. When life is structured, uncertainty decreases. There is less confusion about what needs to be done. This clarity reduces mental pressure and allows a calmer state of mind. A calm mind is more capable of maintaining discipline. Another benefit of systems is that they make progress measurable. When actions are repeated, it becomes easier to see improvement over time. This visibility reinforces commitment. Seeing progress builds confidence and encourages continuation of the system. Systems also help maintain focus on priorities. Without structure, attention shifts easily to less important tasks. With structure, important actions are already defined. This prevents distraction from interfering with meaningful progress. A disciplined system is built gradually. It does not need to be created all at once. Starting with one simple repeated action is enough. Once that action becomes stable, additional elements can be added. This gradual development ensures long-term sustainability. Systems also create resilience. When discipline depends on structure rather than emotion, it becomes more resistant to external disruption. Even during stressful periods, the system provides stability. This stability helps maintain progress during difficult times. Another important aspect is predictability. Systems make behavior predictable, which reduces internal conflict. When actions are consistent, the mind experiences less hesitation. This predictability creates smoother daily functioning. Shippable systems also support long-term growth. Because they are sustainable, they continue working over extended periods. This long-term consistency produces results that cannot be achieved through short bursts of effort. Ultimately, discipline through systems is about removing unnecessary complexity from life. Instead of constantly deciding how to act, the structure defines the action. Instead of relying on motivation, repetition drives behavior. Instead of inconsistency, systems create stability. A life built on simple, repeatable systems becomes more organized, focused, and controlled. Actions are no longer random. They follow a steady rhythm that supports growth. Over time, this rhythm transforms daily life into a structured path of continuous discipline and steady improvement.